Transfer deadline day is one that usually gets journalists wetting themselves with excitement, so you can imagine their disappointment when 11 PM strikes, and the marquee deal of the day is Seydou Doumbia to Newcastle. Thank you, February 2016. That day was about as boring as a conversation with James Milner. However, let's have a rundown of the most dramatic deadline days that have ever happened in the history of the Premier League. Winter 2013. The 2013 winter deadline day may not have been the most thrilling of all time, but it has to make this list surely because it involved one of the most bizarre transfer stories of all time. QPR and West Brom had yet to reach an agreement for the transfer of Peter Odemwingie, so the Nigerian decided to take matters into his own hands, driving down to Loftus Road himself before lurking around awkwardly in his car before someone had to tell him to go home to his wife. It was a bit like turning up to a party you weren't invited to and just lingering around outside the door, just in case. Everton were busy. An £8 million deal for Leroy Fer collapsed due to a dodgy knee, and despite an inquiry for Alvaro Negredo, they settled for some kid from Barnsley called John Stones for a fee of £3 million. Mario Balotelli also left Man City for AC Milan. Chris Samba arrived to save the Hoops from relegation for £12.5 million on a £100,000 a week contract. They'd be selling him back to Russia for the same fee 6 months and a relegation later. Great business, Harry. Summer 2015. 2015's summer deadline day proved to be an exciting one for Manchester United fans, splashing out £36 million on a teenage Anthony Martial, a man who'd scored 11 league goals in his entire career, was a peculiar one. However, there's a story about David De Gea, who the fans were more fixated on as the clock ticked down, with the Spaniard having packed his bags for Real Madrid, only for a fax machine to break at the last minute, and probably costing him back-to-back European Cups. But hey, at least you have that Europa League medal. Cherish it for the rest of your days. It was also the day that Saido Berahino flushed his career down the toilet, showing the immaturity of a man half his age by venting his fury on Twitter by claiming he'd never play for West Brom again after they turned down big money bids from Tottenham. Well, he was half right. He'd go on to play 40 more times for the club, but considering he managed just 7 goals in that time, I wouldn't be surprised if it was just an imposter he dragged off the street. Summer 2006. Deadline day in August 2006 was very similar to today in that it very much concerned the futures of want-away Gunners and the replacements that Arsene Wenger could drag in at the last minute. Jose Antonio Reyes finally got his move back to Spain, having made no secret of his desire to leave for Real Madrid, and Julio Baptista arrived in his place. Ashley Cole and William Gallas also traded places. Pascal Chambonda, the man who seemingly played his last game for Wigan with a transfer request stuffed down his sock, was granted a £6 million move to Tottenham, while Antoine Sibierski excited nobody when he was paraded outside St James's Park. However, the big news of the day concerned 2 people and one grinning Alan Pardew unable to believe his luck. No, I'm not talking about these 2 young ones after a couple of peach snaps, more so Carlos Tevez and Javier Mascherano. 2 of the world's brightest young talents and linked with every big name under the sun, shocked the world by choosing to end up at Upton Park to play alongside the likes of Marlon Harewood, Paul Konchesky and the other Ferdinand. Winter 2011. Arguably the most dramatic winter transfer window deadline day the Premier League has ever seen. As if Stephen Ireland's switch from Aston Villa to Newcastle wasn't enough to set the pulses racing, we were also treated to Liverpool splashing out £23 million on some buck-toothed lad from Ajax, prompting many to claim he was the next Alphonso Alves. Not quite. Chelsea forking out big money for David Luiz, wouldn't be the last time either, and Daniel Sturridge swapping Chelsea for Bolton Wanderers on a loan deal. Oh, and Obafemi Martins ended up at Birmingham City on loan. It might not sound like a blockbuster deal, but within 2 weeks he'd have sent Arsenal fans into meltdown. Not much has changed in the 6 years since. But the real story of the day involved Liverpool stumping up a club record fee of £35 million for Andy Carroll, a man who had so far scored more goals in the Championship than the Premier League. However, the England international was adored at St James's Park, and the Geordies were understandably fuming when he was suddenly unveiled in a Reds kit, with Alan Pardew having to shuffle the prolifically terrible Shafki Kuchi through the door days later. But why did Liverpool fork out such a big number for a man who clearly didn't fit their style of play? Well, as we all know, Roman Abramovich had torn through them with a knife hours earlier, swapping a British record £50 million for Fernando Torres. It may have broken Steven Gerrard's heart at the time, especially when he saw who the direct replacement was, but over the next 3 seasons, Suarez would score 49 more league goals than the Spaniard. Summer 2008. Lay out the hyperbole, get excited, but no deadline day will ever match the one that occurred on September 1st, 2008. Purely for the fact that it completely rearranged the scope of an entire football club in the blink of an eye. 2 months earlier, Manchester City had just been thrashed 8-1 by Middlesbrough. Now they were handpicked by Sheikh Mansour as a vehicle for him to plunder his vast resources into. Of course, he could have bought the club at the start of the window, and not with a couple of hours remaining, but he obviously had an eye for a dramatic entrance. He started by hijacking Chelsea's move for Robinho, with the Blues having reached the point in negotiations with Real Madrid where they even released a photo of the Brazilian on their website dressed in a Chelsea kit. But no, City came in to steal the Brazilian, who probably didn't have a clue where he was going or what a Richard Dunn was when he signed the bumper contract. Other high-profile deals from the day included Everton splashing out a club record £15 million on Marouane Fellaini, who has been elbowing his way across England for 9 years now. Manchester United finally freeing Dimitar Berbatov from a self-imposed exile at White Hart Lane in a £30 million swoop. Tottenham tying up a £14 million deal for Euro 2008 star Roman Pavlyuchenko, and Newcastle United chief officials signing Xisco and Gonzalez, the latter from YouTube highlights, behind Kevin Keegan's back, which, as we all know, did not go down too well.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe.